Hello and welcome, crochet friends. I'm G and this is G Crochet Off the Hook, sharing my love of crochet. And today we have beanie adventures. Yes, beanie-tastic, because beanies are fantastic. They're fantastic for yourself, for loved ones, and community projects. Now, as we draw to a close with the festive season and the new year upon us, I'd like to share with you some of the information that I've gathered for myself with regards to the BEANIE-Tastic 2025 adventures. So I did give a rundown from January to July at around about the July mark, and these stats are for August to November. I've made 34 different beanie patterns, and they have been brought to us by 11 different designers. 20 of the patterns were from Bag O Day, 3 from Spring the Fiber Enthusiast, and 2 from Olga Poltava. There was also Bella Coco, Marley's Crochet, Sarah Sachs Crochet, Viv Crochets, It's Aaron B, The Snugglery, Craft with Jess, Crochet by Nora, and Repeat Crafter Me. Now, the total number of beanie patterns from January until the end of November 2025 have been 91 different beanie patterns, and that came to us via YouTube tutorials from 32 different designers. I'd like to give a big thank you into the universe. I'm not sure these particular designers will watch BEANIE-Tastic 25, but a huge thank you that they have designed and given us YouTube tutorials to be able to create all these 91 different beanie patterns for myself during the course of this year. And of course, these beanie adventures would never have been possible without joining Lara from Mad Mimi's Crochet and Farming and her adventures with Bod Hatterpalooza, and the lovely Litza from Coco's Crochet, who had Beanie of the Week. So my crochet adventures for community projects, which I've been doing for a number of years, have usually only consisted out of a handful of tried and tested beanie patterns that are then made in batches and donated. And this year was extremely exciting to be able to be introduced to 32 different designers and make 91 different beanie patterns. I've certainly kept a note of those that are not too yarn consuming for community project donations or extremely time consuming. However, my stitches and the way of grouping stitches, that repertoire that I've been able to gather has been extremely joyful and has made for better crocheting. So it's with much gratitude that I say thank you to Litza and Laura that I've been able to join their adventures and then create these beanies and share them with our community. So, with those exciting stats out of the way, let's jump into the BEANIE-Tastic 13 batch of beanies that I've been able to crochet. And I think I'm going to work from the latest to the beginning of batch 13, yes, because then I'll be able to access what's on the craft table. So let's start with a beanie of the week with Coco's Crochet. And we got to make this really fun beanie, top down. It's a pattern from Spring the Fiber Enthusiast, and it's called the Unhinged Beanie. I used Kismet's Knitspiration 100% acrylic with a 5.5mm hook. Worked from the top with this gorgeous pattern, and a new stitch to me on how to do this, in essence, a wrapped single crochet detail to the bottom of the beanie. And I used the Kismet's Chunky in the colorway Country Green and Sugar Plum. Now, I did use the Sugar Plum, the Country Green, and another beautiful color, Oatmeal, to make the next beanie, which is a bag-o-day beanie, and it's called the Folded Brim Hat. And there's also a scarf to go along with this particular beanie, and this is also worked from the top down. There are actually 4 repeats of this beautiful pattern over here, and then the brim folded over. I only did the 2 repeats because I did feel that doing 4 of them and folding it up, although it would make for a very snuggly warm beanie, would be just a little bit too much for what we needed down south. So this beanie, I used a 6mm hook, and as I said, the Knitspirations chunky yarn. Then we move on to the Spirograph Beanie, and for this one I used Kismet's Making Every Day Mandela Day, an Aran weight yarn. It's the series called One Ball, One Scarf. I used a 4mm hook, and this is the Spirograph Beanie by Crystal from Bag-O-Day. This was one of those time-consuming beanies that gives you this absolutely gorgeous textured style beanie. And this colorway that I used was called Rose, and it really did bloom, if I can put it that way, into this beautiful beanie. And I think somebody would love to be able to wear that beanie. Then we have the Vague Memories Beanie, and this was one that I was able to use some yarn ends from a previous beanie. This is another Bag-O-Day beanie that we had for Beanie of the Week, called the Vague Memories Beanie, and I use Cartapo Snowball and Owl Yarn's Variegated Cold Lobster. I used a 5.5mm hook. You can see all that beautiful texture. All these beanies except one I'll share just now is worked from the top down, and I chose to use the Cartopo in this caramelly brown color with this variegated, and just broke the beanie down into doing this. It looks like a star stitch in the variegated, and then we ended with, it has rolled up a little bit here, I think it was back loops, single crochets at the bottom. But so that was just playing with taking the pattern and the yarn ends that I had that I didn't want to let go to waste, and made the Vague Memories Beanie. Sometimes our color combinations don't always go, and sometimes I thought those colors didn't look too bad together. Actually, this was one of my favorite beanies to make. Okay, but I really wouldn't be able to keep it on for longer than that. I don't have the fan on, so I'm hoping I don't break out into a sweat. Okay, moving on, we then had the Breakthru Beanie. This is another beautiful, very quick beanie to make. And I was able to use, I had made in the last batch a beanie out of this yarn. It's called Narco Vega Tweed. It's 100% premium acrylic. And I used a 6mm hook to make the Breakthru Beanie. Another pattern from Crystal at Bag O' Day. And I made this one a little while ago. I think you turn your work at the end of each round for these stitches over here. These ones over there. And this yarn was so lovely and soft. And I've made a note for myself during the course of the year, every time I got this yarn out of my stash, that it did make up beanies super, super well. And I could usually get 2 beanies, depending on the pattern, out of one 100-gram skein. Has 195 meters. And I was fortunate enough to pick up another 3 of these, which I'll be able to share with you. I think I got... Sorry about that. Yes, I was able to find one of the same color that I had used for this particular beanie. And then I also found 2 more of this Narco Vega Tweed. So I'm going to add these to my yarn stash for beanies in the future. Okay, then moving on, I got sidetracked then with knowing that I had actually purchased that yarn. And then I also made a Repeat Craft to Me beanie, and I used Owl Yarn's Charity. And this is not the yarns, didn't create this situation. This was me creating this situation for myself. I made her Gingerbread Beanie. It is available on Sarah's blog. I used a 4mm hook, and it is the Gingerbread Beanie. It's available in different sizes, and I would have thought that it wouldn't be too difficult to create. And the beanie itself isn't, except I had not done the knit stitch in a very long time. And this stitch really created a very dense, no stretch kind of stitch. Really trying to pull it open there and I can't. But the pattern itself is really fun to follow. And for myself, I've made a note that I definitely need to go up a hook size or 2. And perhaps I will attempt to make another one in the future. But the knit stitch for me was very time consuming, although, you know, it's not a difficult stitch to do. It just requires, for me, concentration and attention to how tightly I crochet. And then I just added a little pom-pom on top. This may not make the donation pile. I'm going to see if it loosens up a bit after a wash. But if it doesn't, then I won't, because it really is just too, I wouldn't want this to go to a little one. It would sit very stiff on their head. But it was fun to do a graph, and I think the gingerbread men did turn out quite cute. But something I'd need to work on in the future is the knit stitch. Then we had another beautiful beanie from Spring the Fiber Enthusiast, and for this one I used 2 different yarn brands. It was the Kismet's Pop-Up DK, which sort of is more in the line of a chunky to me, and I paired it with some yarn ends from Kismet's Knitspiration, which is similar to those beanies I showed right in the beginning. I love this Knitspiration chunky. Not so keen on their DK. It's a very, very lightweight DK, but the chunky has been working up a treat. So I put those 2 colors together for the painted pony beanie, and I used a 5.5mm hook. And what I love about Spring's patterns is everybody is able to do their crown at the top of the beanie to the size that you would like to make the beanie. It's your standard increasing rows, and then of course a beautiful pattern. And for this one I just did, I think, only three rows of the brim, and it stretches quite nicely as well. A really lovely warm beanie, and then also just splitting up the colors made it unique in its own way. And the last adult size beanie, I should say, is this 8 cable beanie from Crystal at Bag O' Day. I used Kismet's 67 blankets in the colorway Flamingo. We might remember seeing this color from Pink October, with a 5mm crochet hook, beautiful texture at the top, and then our cabled stitches down the side. Again, beautifully explained by Crystal. I feel that any of her video tutorials even a beginner could tackle. And for this one was the Making Everyday Mandela Day Kismet's DK yarn in the colorway Flamingo. So those are our gorgeous 8 fantastic beanies that we've been able to make. And that leaves me with sharing where I have a very big passion, and that is crocheting beanies for babies. Now this was including making these 91 patterns during the course of 2025. The majority of these patterns have been for adult size beanies. And usually my beanies in the past have been, I'd say, 90% for babies and 10% for adults. So I had that adventure this year of being able to make and visit so many different adult size beanies. And a lot of them you could adapt to make child size beanies, I'd say. But sometimes with the beautiful patterns that you get to create, it's not always possible to make them baby beanies. And then we had Beanie of the Week, which was, this is a pattern by Olga Poltava. It was one of our Beanies of the Week, and it is the V-Stitch Newborn Beanie. And I had the absolute joy of going through some of my baby's beanie yarns specifically. And I grabbed Kismet's Soft and Gentle Baby Shimmer DK. It's a 50-gram ball. This colorway is gray. It's 100% acrylic, and there's 150 meters in this little skein. And this is the V-Stitch Newborn Beanie. Now initially I made one using a 4mm crochet hook. This is definitely newborn size. And then I made it again with a 4.5mm hook, and this is also newborn size, but it would also suit 0 to 3 months. This yarn is so lovely and soft, and it has the gentlest stretch to it as well. So from this 150-gram ball, which was 150 meters, I was able to make 2 of the V-stitch newborn beanies. And of course that got me thinking about my stash and growing it for beanies for babies. And that sent me down a whole other rabbit hole of wanting to put something together with it to make a little set. And that's when I came across a newborn sock pattern by Crochet by Nora. And using the same yarn, and again I made one set of booties, and then after the 2 beanies and the 1 set of booties, I had this much left of this 50-gram ball. And this is the adorable newborn sock, which I was so thrilled by because of the way that it's crocheted. This is crocheted all in one piece, one long piece. I did intend to make one and not finish it to show you, but when you head over to Crochet by Nora, you will be able to see for yourself how easy this sock is. Now, my biggest fear when making socks to go with the beanies as a set is usually one would not match up to the other one. I can sit and do it at the same time, not take a break in between the 2 socks, but somewhere along the line, we experience this with amigurumi, making 2 legs or arms for something, sometimes 2. But with booties, I would often have one that just didn't look the same as the other. Stitch count was right, everything was right. But with these, and I have made quite a few more, they have turned out beautifully every single time. And you have your starting tail and your end tail, and that's it. The only tip that I would remind anybody wanting to go and watch this tutorial is, it is mentioned in the tutorial but later on, that when you start making the sock, do leave yourself a long sewing tail. It's not a train smash if you don't. It's not mentioned right in the beginning of the tutorial, because you can always attach yourself another little piece of yarn. But this sock is absolutely genius, the way it's made up. So I truly enjoyed this sock pattern as well as this V-stitch newborn beanie. So of course, being happy and tickled pink with this pattern and having found the socks to go with it, I did make some more. And I had this Lullaby double knit from Elle in the colorway Monarch. And this is a 100-gram skein. There's 300 meters on here. I used a 4 and a 4.5 millimeter hook just to try the stretch on those 2. And I was able to make, and I'm sure I'll be able to get one more beanie out of what's left, but I was able to make 3 completed little beanies with their socks. And I am truly chuffed for myself that all the socks, their little pairs, I just put a tag with it so that they stay connected. All the socks turned out to be matched. There wasn't one that I had to try and match with another one and then make another one to match the one that I hadn't matched. You know, you have those days when you're making, sometimes even mittens turn out like that. But so I was able to make 5 of these sets so far. And then because I hadn't been in my beanie stash for a while, I saw that I was quite limited on the yarn balls that I would have, because this will be my goal in 2026, is to investigate many more newborn beanie sets and 0 to 3 month beanies, and hopefully booties that can go with them for my Beanies for Babies donations next year. It's an adventure that I'm excited to get stuck into. And with that in mind, I was able to get some more of this lullaby that I used, this lullaby DK, in this beautiful colorway called Gecko and Gala and Shipwreck. And I'm quite excited to know that with the V-stitch beanie pattern, I'd be able to get at least 4 beanies and 3 booty sets out of it. But I will be exploring some other patterns as well. And I think those are going to make beautiful colored sets. And then, of course, running out on this gorgeous soft and gentle shimmer DK, I was able to get, and I've got 2 each of these. Another one in this beautiful beige color, and there's a blue, this gorgeous lime color, and in the white. And I think that's going to make beautiful newborn and 0 to 3 month baby beanies, as well as booties to go with them. And that brings us to the end of BEANIE-Tastic number 13, and a overall end of the year tally of the BEANIE-Tastic adventures. 91 patterns and 32 different designers. I look forward to some more BEANIE-Tastic makes in 2026 and discovering what other baby beanie sets I'd be able to make for beanies for babies. So to all our friends in the Northern Hemisphere, do stay warm, but this is the best time for you to be hooking up some BEANIE-Tastic makes. And to all our friends in the Southern Hemisphere, where beanies may not be on our mind, I hope that you've kept some notes and that you're going to be ready to hook some BEANIE-Tastic magic when the weather does turn sometime next year. Until I see you all again, happy crocheting.